a risk that inexpensive Dublin basically contaminates the whole Irish product and has a negative gives a negative impression of the entire country as well. That said, research shows us that nearly everybody who comes to Ireland, certainly for the first time, wants to take in Dublin as part of the Ireland experience. So we can't just overlook Dublin, we can't ignore Dublin. As an industry operator at a recent meeting that we had on Brexit issues in London described that it would be like someone coming to Ireland and not going to Dublin for the first time would be like Hamlet without the prince. The general feedback is that they want to take in Dublin as part of Ireland in general. So I think the key thing is to try to sell the other parts, in tandem with Dublin, and try to get people out as well to experience the areas where there is capacity, and to try to add value to those visits out of Dublin as well. Something I am quite concerned about at the moment is the tendency for people to stay in Dublin and to do 5-6 hour day trips to the west coast in coaches and coming back to Dublin again at night, where there's very little value added to the areas in the west coast, and where there is further contribution to the overcapacity issues in Dublin. I don't think there's any winners out of that type of scenario. So I think we need to try to encourage people to maybe, if they are visiting the west coast or visiting the south coast or going up to the northern part of the country and to the northern part of the islands, that they would that they would try to stay there as well, rather than these day trips that I think, whereas there are benefits, there could be more benefits maybe by doing it in a different way and a more sustainable way.
We talked some time ago that there's a possibility of a bed tax being applied to Dublin, and that's still on there.
Yeah, I mean, look, you go around the world and you see city taxes in various locations, and there was talks as well about the 9% rate of VAT, reverting back to 13.5%. I don't see in an area where we're trying to restore competitiveness, or where we're trying to stay as affordable as possible, where actually putting an extra tax from the state would help in that regard. Now, look, I mean, I'm constantly trying to look at different models and see, look, what can we do if we can't appeal to hoteliers. I would say, look, in some cases, it's a very small percentage in some cases that are gouging, if you want to use that word. I'm a bit of an anorak when it comes to hotels and prices. I tend to look on some of the engines, every couple of days a week, just to see what prices are there. And in most cases in Dublin, you'd actually get reasonably good value for money for European capital. But of course, a couple of examples will give a place a bad name, and I think it would be very unfair of us to paint everyone, first of all, with the one brush, and second of all, maybe to give the impression, perhaps unfairly, that Dublin, does not represent good value for money. There's excellent value for money to be got out there, but I suppose there is a case of caveat emptor. But also, this argument about the 9% VAT rate, about having done its job, I think people who are pushing that argument, and political parties who are pushing that argument, I think are displaying a gross misunderstanding of the Irish tourism product overall and the Irish tourism industry. And whereas, yes, it has done its job, I feel it is continuing to do its job, and it has a huge role to play in the future as well. And I know that for many enterprises, the 9% rate of VAT is the difference between survival and failure. For many enterprises, it's the difference between being able to reinvest in their product and not being able to reinvest. I think it's a case of it probably was one of the most pro-rural policies of any government in the history of the state, because it's got into every single community through food provision and through accommodation provision, and tourism services in general. And tourism is one of the best dispersed industries that we have in this country, and at a time where we're talking an awful lot about east-west imbalance, tourism, I think, is one particular indigenous industry that can really help address that. So to do away with an incentive that for parts of the country, particularly the peripheral parts of the country, is a huge boost and a huge plus, I think would be very short-sighted. And it's more than paying for itself every year through the increase in activity. And I certainly would not envisage any revert back to the 13.5% rate while I'm Minister.